Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Next Generation Alliance webinar on the topic of No Fear Publishing Strategies That Work. I'm David Jones, and our presenter today is my good friend, David Sanford. David and I have known each other, oh my goodness, we've known each other for some 32 years. We were colleagues at the Louis Palau Association for over 20 years. David is one of the most knowledgeable people I know on the business of getting published. David loves working with key Christian leaders in the busy intersection of speaking events, social networking, mass media opportunities, and especially helping leaders and evangelists get their books published and into the marketplace. Through the years, David has created numerous exciting publishing opportunities for quite a number of the NGA members. For the past 3 years, David has been coaching a group of carefully selected leaders through his work with Corban University. So please welcome a very good friend of NGA, Mr. David Sanford.
So it's clear, as you'll see from the slide there, I'm not planning on covering every word of the 16 pages in the handout. Instead, I want to give you a 35,000-foot overview of the key points. And there are no other blanks. You don't have to write anything on your handout, but please do write down your questions right on the screen there so we can have them. So let's get started. What does it take for you to successfully publish your book or books? And there are 5 requirements you'll see in the handout. One of them that I find consistently that surprises NGA evangelists is the fact that they say, well, you know, I've got all this content that's inside, but I don't know how to capture it. I don't find to write everything down. Well, the fact is, every time you're at a speaking engagement, every minute that you talk, if it's recorded, is a full page in a book manuscript. In other words, if you speak for 30 minutes, you've just created content for 30 pages. Imagine how many minutes you have spoken in the last 12 months. What if that was recorded? Please, this one request, record, make sure somebody is recording every time you speak. There's something dynamic about your audience that you can see as you speak. And then make sure that those messages, the particular ones where you just feel the Lord using you, where you get it from people, and pray the gospels of volunteers who are friends of your ministry, maybe even friends of your family, who will volunteer to transcribe those messages. And I remember Dave Jones coming back from one of Louis Palau speaking engagements in Bellingham, Washington. And he was speaking at a conference there, and Dave came to me and said, I have all the messages by Louis transcribed. But this one particular message just generated a tremendous amount of buzz in the audience. He goes, I have no idea which part of Louis's message they loved, but have it transcribed and tell me what you think. And you and I all know that Louis sometimes gives more than one message in a message. Sometimes he has 3. But the middle message in there was on planting your roots deeply in the local church. And he gave example after example from his own life, he and Pat, and what they did to plant their roots deeply in their home church. And it's one of the hallmarks. It's part of the DNA of LPA. And so I decided, okay, this is not a book, but this is a great article. Well, it ended up being published by Focus on the Family. It ended up being published for 120 times in various magazines and online locations. And it was absolute gold, even though Louis didn't know, David didn't know, and at the beginning I didn't know which part of this message is speaking to something that people don't normally hear, but that they need to. So again, we can go through all 5 points, so I'll let you do that. I will just underscore the 5th point on perseverance. if you want to get a book published, we're not talking about 10 years from now, but it's going to be, depending on when you finish writing your book and having it edited, and endorsers review it and others, it's going to take several months. But a number of you, for part of this, will have the privilege of mailing me a copy of your book when it comes out in January or February or March this next year. Imagine going through ministry in 2015 with a book that you can make available. Why do I love books? Well, I'll get to that here with this next section. What do you and I need to overcome in order to publish successfully? And you all know that I didn't write the rules for our call. You didn't either. The fact is, what is the shorthand when a radio talk show host or when a television interviewer is introducing a guest? They always say he's the president of this, the CEO of that, the executive director of whatever ministry, and the author of, and then they give a title of one of his books or her books. And it's the media's shorthand for saying, here's somebody of credibility. Now, again, why did they choose to do that? Well, for some reason in our psyche over the centuries, we've decided that publishing a book is very important. And so that's why this webinar is so important. And that's why I provided all of these notes. But again, think about interviews that you listen to on radio and television. One of NGA's members, Alan Green, of Lifelight Ministries, and the author of the new book, Taking the Church Outside the Walls. And what does that say? It says he's created an organization that's still doing good for hundreds of thousands of people, and he has something to say on this radio program, this television program. And so, again, we need to get over our fear of success. And it sounds totally counterintuitive. I cannot tell you how many NGA members and friends of the Palau Association who have a book in their ear, they're afraid to even share it with Dave or share it with me. And yet, by overcoming that fear of sharing, which is point 2 here in this silent fear, or their fear of success, that, well, what if this book is really, it'll interrupt speaking ministry. It'll time away that I could be doing with media, or creating new online content, or speaking at more conferences. The reality is that a book is this massive golden key in our culture that will open doors to fulfill many of your dreams. The book is not the most important thing that you're going to do, but it opens the door for the right kind of media interviews, the right kinds of speaking engagement, opens doors for you to contribute to periodicals and online sites that you would love to have presence there and expand the impact of your ministry. A book extends and multiplies the impact of your ministry. And even if somebody comes to your event and they hear you speak 45 minutes, we'll speak to them for 240 minutes. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so strategic that the Palau Association and Next Generation Alliance have made an ongoing commitment throughout the years to encourage each member to publish at least one book. Again, we already talked about the fact that we have some people part of this webinar who already have written a complete book. I remember one friend of the Palau Association, I sat there at his office and he had his laptop open, and I said, well, what's in your word bank? And by word bank, how much have you already written? And he looked down, and he was quiet for a minute, and then he finally said, well, actually, I have 11 books in this laptop. And I'm like, 11 books. I said, do the world a favor. Don't write any more books. And he was a little stunned. And I said, do the world a favor, and let's start getting them out of your computer and getting them published. Well, now, 8 years later, he has 5 of those books published. Between you and me, there are a couple books that he has on his computer that should not be published. But the other 9 are great, and he's moving forward a book every 12 to 18 months. And God has done some amazing things for him in his ministry because of that. I remember talking to another friend of the Next Generation Alliance who's an award-winning photographer who addresses key social issues through his photography, writing, speaking engagements. And he had this hauntingly beautiful book that he had done on eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, other eating disorders, and the real stories of people, men and women, young and old, who have struggled with it. He had this gorgeous book in his computer for 3 years, and he had never shared it with anyone. And I encouraged him to use these 16 pages to follow what I said, and literally within 4 months, his book was published. And I said, why didn't you publish it before now? Well, it got back to those issues of fear. It also came back to, well, he goes, I went to a local printer and they wanted to charge me $80 a book. And I'm like, I'm really glad you didn't do that, because you can publish it through Amazon, which is not only the world's biggest book retailer, but is also the world's biggest publisher. And you can get your books for less than $8. And when they retail for $30, that's a very good profit for him. And a lot of people will tell me, oh, you don't want to publish through Amazon. And the fact is, though, that the world's largest retailer knows how to sell books. I've seen kids as young as 12 years old read through these 16 pages. I didn't give it to them. Somebody did. And the kid has published a book, and the money every month goes into his college fund. His parents love me. I can get as many copies of his book as they want. Well, the reality is, going back to this other gentleman whose book, originally a printer wanted to charge him $80, but a printer's only going to print it. On books published in America, ran a glowing review, and they didn't hesitate at the very beginning to say this book was published by Amazon CreateSpace. And when even Publishers Weekly sees no difference between that and Doubleday or other major publishers, and I've worked with those publishers, Harper, with Wiley & Sons, with a number of other major publishers. And the fact is that the lifetime sales of books published by traditional publishers, lifetime sales from beginning till the book's out of print, average sales 250 copies. It used to be thousands. But the reality is a lot of ministry leaders and leaders in other spheres of life are going directly to Amazon to publish their books. And I'll go more into this, but because it's easy, it is super inexpensive. It's almost free, especially if you have a designer on your staff. And so again, we'll go more into those details later in this time. On pages 3 and 4, you'll see that there's a 90-minute exercise that I encourage you to do. Pick your favorite place. It might be if you live by a lake or ocean, you may want to go to the beach and do this exercise, your favorite coffee shop, a cabin of a friend, wherever is really comfortable for you to be creative. For me, oftentimes going to one of my favorite coffee shops about 5 minutes from home, and same place my wife goes as well. We usually don't go together because somehow that doesn't help creativity. We have a little internal filter there. The reality is I want to encourage all of you within the next 10 days to do this exercise, 90 minutes, and then send me the results. And I'll go ahead and give you feedback. Dave knows I only come in one flavor, and that's blunt. So if you have 6 ideas, I may say, well, 5 are great. Let's probably pass on idea number 3. So I won't go any more into that. It's self-explanatory, but I really encourage you to do this exercise. Page 5, there are a number of details there. The main thing that I want to reiterate is be sure every speaking engagement, put it in your letter of acceptance is one of the requirements. Remember, you love to talk. Even more than I love to talk. And my friends will tell you I love to talk. But the reality is you've got articles and you've got books that come out of about articles, and page 7 is a sample letter called a query letter that you can send to editors of periodicals or online places that you would like to see your writings published. And again, articles sometimes are even more exciting than books. They're not the big golden key. An article might reach 100,000, 1 million readers, and all in one day, and very gratifying and amazing. And you probably have more hits on your website than you've had in your life. But there's one more section we want to go through here, and then we'll jump into questions. But this is the most important section of the whole 16 pages. Who do you need on your publishing team? None of these are people that you pay. You're not going to hire and have more staff. But you need one or more Barnabases on your team. Barnabas, of course, is the beloved New Testament character who was a great support and encouragement to Paul, to John Mark, to a number of other New Testament characters. And I remember being part of Bob Mortimer's publishing team and giving support and encouragement. And I finally said, you know, Bob, if I promise you that your book will be published, could you write a little faster? And he finished writing his book. And he took one of the principles that I encouraged him, which is do author parties every time you speak at an event. And it may be the only time that audience gets to see you in person. Sell your book there. And I explained to him how to do that. In fact, I'll offer to you to send the same 2-page document that I gave him. I said, here's the script to use. But he lined up 20 author parties from LA to Jacksonville, Florida. He drove in his camper all the way across 20 different events in 8 days and made thousands of dollars every day. He literally had Amazon CritSpace ship the books to arrive the day before he got to each city. So he wasn't lugging thousands of books. But needless to say, you know, his wife still likes me to this day. That was just an exciting way, and that was just his book. So you need contributors. You want to have an ad hoc review committee for his endorsers. Be sure to ask Dave Jones, who didn't give me permission to say that, to endorse your book. And for some of you, if you want to go the traditional route, I may introduce you to a literary agent. So let's move on. Be sure to study the 16-page handout after this webinar. But before I continue, do you have any questions for me? Actually, I've got one question right here that is from Justin, saying, I recently self-published my first book. What are the next steps I should take to make it more widely available and also to get it looked at by a distributor? And I'm not sure with this question that just came if he used Amazon CreateSpace or if he self-published it in another format. If he worked with another company, say Xulon or one of the other companies, he probably did pay thousands of dollars to have it published, and probably has a lot of books in storage that he wants to sell. But the reality is, and I've worked in the book publishing world since before I started working here back in 19. And having a distributor for your book used to be very, very important. But now we can go directly to Amazon CreateSpace. So even if it's been published by Xulon or someone else, as long as the contract doesn't require that you not publish somewhere else, and I hope they don't have that clause in the agreement, I would also go ahead and upload it to Amazon CreateSpace. And then that way, it's not only available for sale on a unique page where you make an extra $3 through CreateSpace, but it's available on Amazon, which is the 800-pound gorilla of booksellers, and it's also available for sale on all the other major online book retailers, and it costs you $0. As long as you have a PDF of cover design and a PDF of the interior design. Now, unfortunately, some you do want to be very careful. And again, self-publishing, I'm not saying that that's always a bad way to go, but I would much rather send my friends and Dave Jones' friends, and any friend of Luis is a friend of mine, but send them to Amazon CreateSpace simply because after publishing well over 120 books through that route in the last 3 years, we know that it works. And I have yet to have somebody get a hold of me and complain. So any other questions, Dave, before?
Yeah, this, publishers, book houses will offer a self-publishing package. What's your opinion of these packages?
Well, yeah, I'll kind of jump ahead to page 6, section G there. At the bottom, section 3 says that since December 2009, we have 4 different options for publishing your books. And but the ones that I would recommend, 10% of the time I'm going to say your book should be published by a traditional publisher. 10% of the time I'll say that is the route to go. The great news, it's not the only route. But if by self-publishing you have to give somebody else your ministry's money or your own money, and that's more than $50, then my answer is that is not a good deal. Why? Because you can publish it directly through Amazon. You can buy your own book for $3.20, give or take, depending on how long you write, how many pages. But literally, I have ministry leaders who are buying books for $3. They're not even selling their books at their events. They just say, give a gift. Goes in a box. They don't have to have somebody there watching money or exchanging things. And they'll come back and they'll say, David, I didn't sell my book at my event. I just made it available. I bought it for $3 from Amazon CreateSpace, and I told people it retails for $20 on Amazon, but you can just put in whatever you want. And I expected to get $4 a book. I got $24 a book. Why? Well, think about it. They've just heard you speak. God has moved their heart. You've just given on it in a check to your ministry. You take the address off of that check, and you thank them for being a contributor to your ministry. You can do more donor acquisition after you're done speaking by simply letting people take your book, and in fact, you'll want to encourage them. Don't take just one, take 5 or 10. You know, and people are getting checks for $100, $200, $500 from people, and that is their first gift. You know, it is hard to write those thank you letters, but believe me, it's just under point 3C of doing custom publishing. And so sometimes, again, probably about 10% of the time, I will recommend that someone go ahead and they're selling not just 750 books a quarter, but 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 books, and they want this to be the best possible book and to have a publisher's name on the spine. Great route. Again, I love people, but just remember, when people go online to Amazon to buy a book, the one detail that doesn't matter to them at all about buying a book, I mean, how many pages, how much the book weighs, how big it is, or how small, all those details matter. The one detail that does not matter, literally 99% of the book buying public, is who published the book. Difference between HarperCollins and Green Books or any other publishing company. They just don't know. It doesn't matter. And Amazon is the one telling us that it doesn't matter. They still list it, but that's the case. So publishing through Amazon CreateSpace, point D there at the bottom of page 6, explains to you that the Amazon CreateSpace publishing option is fast, it's practically free. A lot of authors pay $0. Now, they'll be able to charge you to design your book, the cover, the interior. Don't do that, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But it leaves you 100% in control of your book now and in the future. And in fact, I want to give the example of Suzanne Fry, whose husband Ron worked with Dave Mile Association a number of years ago. He's done webinars as well for NGA. Great friend. Suzanne, his wife, was moved by the Lord at the beginning of this year to do a book of amazing stories of answered prayer. And so she asked friends to ask their friends to ask their friends to contribute real-life stories. And here's what she's doing. And this is really option E, then write down in the handout. But you may want to write this one point, is she decided to publish it through CreateSpace and sell it to traditional publisher. And in fact, her publisher, which is Harvest House, has said, we want you to sell it through CreateSpace because you're building buzz for this book. Just save 2 chapters to publish in the trade edition that we do. And so she's got 50 chapters. I've read the whole book. It's coming out next month. And I'm already buying a bunch of copies to give as Christmas gifts. But the reality is she is making more money doing these author parties because she's buying her book for $3.20 and a little bit for shipping. And she's getting ready to sign a contract that'll pay her, I won't tell you how much, but she's going to have good Christmas gifts under the tree for everybody else this year. But the publisher wants her to do it. And in fact, is insisting, don't take it off the market until 3 or 4 months before the trade edition comes out. And so this is eat your cake and keep it too. And that's great. Dave, you got another question?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's kind of along the line of the options you were just saying. The first option about finding a traditional publisher is too often say to us, you're not sellable. You don't have a platform. Even if the publisher thinks the book content is excellent, without a platform, they're interested in you as an author.
Well, again, that is true, and it's the reasons why 5 years ago, well, yeah, almost 5 years ago, that I moved to send 10% of leaders' books and say, let's go to a traditional publisher 10% of the time to custom publishing, and the other 80% to go through Amazon CreateSpace. Think about how many people you speak to in a year. Even if you speak to only 900 people in a year, and on average, they buy only one copy of your book. They don't buy any extra ones to give to family and friends, share your message. They just buy one. You've sold 900 books. Now again, some people will buy 10, some people won't buy it at all. But say you only sell 900 books, but you're making $10 a book. You've just added $9,000 to your income. Traditional publishers want to know you've got 1 million people. Most of us don't have 1 million people that we speak to in a year. Now maybe through the media we do, but not face-to-face. The reality is you have a big enough platform. And if you feel like it's not enough to go to a traditional publisher, that's totally fine. You'll make 50 cents or 75 cents per book sold with a traditional publisher, and you'll get paid 18 months from now. Or you can sell it and you make the money immediately, or more on average. And again, for some people, it's just astounded them. It's like, why do I make so much money? I don't have anybody on staff or a volunteer even making change for them. And it's because people who are moved by your message are motivated to buy your book. And not just to buy one. Simply invite them, take as many as you want. I've only had once, now that I think of it, where somebody connected to NGA called up and complained. He said, I saw somebody take a book and he didn't put any money in the box or the basket or whatever he had. And I said, well, do you know who it is? He goes, I have no idea. I said, so you don't know if he's a guy who wrote a check for $100 and took 10 copies of your book and thought of one more for that and took 11th one. And how much money did you make last night? $4,200.
And how do I go about retaining a good literary agent?
You only need an agent if you're in the 10% who, because of the large platform you have, where you're reaching, at least 750,000 people a year face to face. Most of us don't need an agent. Now, I've been an agent for many years, but the reality is I don't make a penny encouraging people to custom publish. I don't make a penny encouraging them to go to Amazon CreateSpace. But again, if you need an agent, the great news is I'll be very glad to introduce you to an agent who can help you. It's what I'll do because I love NGA. I've worked with so many people in NGA over the years, and so don't worry about an agent unless you've got a large platform. Just tell me, and I'll be glad to hear more about you, your ministry, the book that you're working on, and then connect you with an agent that I think will be not only excited about the spiritual ministry impact, but also will know how to sell your book to the right publisher. So anything else, Dave?
Well, here's someone who says they've got 2 books that they published in the United Kingdom, but they're asking, how do I break into the North America market?
Again, the thing that I didn't mention is with Amazon CreateSpace, your book can be published all over the world. Not in every country, but certainly in the U.S., Canada, the UK, Europe. They have different facilities for publishing books within an hour of the order. It's already printed and ready to ship unless it's a large order. And speaking of large orders, I had one friend of the Palau Association who published her book, and an organization contacted her and said, could you give us the pricing for 400,000 copies of your book? Her book had been out for less than 3 months. And so we talked to Amazon, and they said, yes, we can publish 400,000 books, but you got to give us a couple of months because we can't stop everything just to print that many copies of your book. And by the way, the price won't be $3, it's going to be $1. So it really doesn't matter how many you need, but that would be my best recommendation. Doesn't close the door. Absolutely does not close the traditional publisher. Going to CreateSpace and selling 2,000 or 3,000 copies in the U.S. is the way to get a publisher's attention and get a contract. And sometimes even before you've published it, just to show the quality of the book to them. And we'll talk a little more about making sure that we have that quality so it's the same quality as if a major publisher had designed, edited your book, and published it. Dave?
It's an interesting question, David. The question is, what are your thoughts on going after an independent distributor to get my already published books into Christian bookstores or a Christian bookstore chain?
Well, the difficulty, Dave, is that not to sell books anymore. We have seen the majority of the Christian bookstores here in the greater Portland area servicing over 1.5 million people in this metro area. We've seen most of the Christian stores, a lot of them, have closed. The other ones that are open still, I drive by and there are 4 cars in the parking lot and there are 4 employees inside the store. I remember several years ago, Dave, good friend of the Palau Association, Jerry Jenkins, got a hold of me and he said, I just finished a book signing at a bookstore. Now this is somebody who sold over 70 million books. And he said there were only 4 people at my book signing. 2 of them were staff at Barnes & Noble. And then there were 2 people that came into the store, and one of them was absolutely insane. Totally crazy. Could not wait to get out there. 1 book to a normal person. Bookstores don't sell books anymore. You will sell more books in your first author party or your first speaking engagement than all the bookstores in America will sell for you in a year. And it sounds totally counterintuitive, but it's the same thing with music. Think about it. When's the last time you walked into a music store and bought an album? Well, for me, I don't even remember what year that was. Because if I want to buy an album, I click and I bought the whole album. It's downloaded onto my computer in less than a minute. If I want to buy a favorite song, I can buy that. But that is the same reality for buying books. People buy them online in most cases. It's a huge percentage, nearing 90%. Are sold online, not in brick-and-mortar stores.
David, 2 questions kind of similar. One, can an already published, well, let me back up. Speak to Kindle version of books, and is it better to go the ebook route rather than the traditional route? Talk a little bit about ebooks and Kindle.
Well, it's not an either-or thing. You need to think of your book as a product line, not a singular product that's published once and that's it. And so it's really important to think, I can publish my book, I can update it later, maybe a year from now, I can add another chapter, I can do an updated edition, and the day that you're ready to publish that, moment, as soon as you upload the new interior of your book and the new cover, if you've added some material, you may have to increase the spine width just a little bit, and they know exactly what to do. For no cost, you can upload every book ordered from that moment on. No matter if they're buying it from House.com, BooksAMillion.com, doesn't matter where they buy it, it will represent the new updated edition. For no cost, you can also have it published by Kindle. You can have it published in other ebook formats. Remember, if you go this route, you own the book 100%. You can even take 3 chapters out of part 2 of your book and publish them as a booklet. You can do books as small as 24 pages. Now, back when I worked with Luis Palau, we had one booklet that was 24 pages that literally millions of copies and distributed around the world. And I've had people from Latvia and from other parts of the world who, when talking and I asked for their testimony, they read that booklet 10 years ago. They read that booklet 20 years ago. They read that booklet when the Iron Curtain came down. And that's how they came to Christ. You know, I still tear up every time I go to an NGA event or to watch Luis Palau, or somebody comes up and tells me that they came to Christ through a book or a booklet. It never gets old. And so we don't want to publish just one edition of your book. We want to publish it in as many editions as possible. So again, think product line, not singular product. And I know product isn't a spiritual word, but the reality is people are paying the format, not for the content. And so a hardcover book is more expensive to print, and so you have to charge more. An ebook can be sold for $3.99. You could sell it for 99 cents and still make a lot of money for your ministry. And so again, think product line. So more questions?
You know, Dan, I think your slides, keep going through your presentation, because I think some of your slides answer a few of these questions we have here, but we do
Great. Yeah, let's continue on. And how much time do we have left?
We have 15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay. Well, good thing that we can go through this quickly. We've already talked about the 4 publishing options. Important note here, the same level of work needs to be done, regardless of which option you pursue. So don't skimp or skip any steps that are talked about here. Going base is not an excuse to do B+ or B- work. We want to do A+ work. And a lot of times people are really surprised when they come to this slide. What do prospective book publishers, if you're going the traditional route or you're going the custom publishing route, again, 10% of the time I send people one or the other option, or 10% to one and 10% to the other. But do they want the whole book written? And they actually don't. And if you do have the whole book written, they don't want to see the whole book. And that really surprises people. It's like, I thought they published books. But a traditional publisher is a business. And you're going to 50 or 75 cents. Why? They want to keep most of the money for themselves. But you need to craft 2 documents. And these same ones need to be crafted Amazon CreateSpace, because you're going to use the material in these documents to sell your book through Amazon and other online retailers. The first one is you want to have 2 incredible sample chapters. And they don't have to be chapters 1 and 2. They can be chapters 1 and 7 or 3 and 8. It doesn't matter. But secondly, you need to craft a 10 to 12 page professional business proposal. And the great thing is there are 21 key questions that every publisher wants answered. I've listed them A through, well, let me go all the way to the end here to you. 21 questions, and I can help you. Glad to review your sample chapters. I'll be glad to review your business proposal. I'm not going to send you an invoice because my heart is for NGA and has been since before NGA even had a name. And the there. Let me just quickly mention 3 points. G, you need to have a really clear understanding of your audience. When I wrote the book, If God Disappears, I told my publisher, Tyndale House, the book is written to speak to the person who's struggling with their faith, or maybe even have walked away from the faith. But the design of the book, the packaging of the book, the marketing of the book has to be to the family member or friend of the person. The person who's going to read the book that needs it is not the person who's going to buy it. And I've even had letters where somebody has said, at the end of the book, you say, don't put this book on a bookshelf. Give it to somebody else. I've had people write to me and say, each of us who read your book have written our name on the front page of the book with the date that we finished reading it. And I just read your book, and I recommitted my life to Christ. Those letters never get old. The purpose of your book and the need, focus on the family, called up and talked to my wife and me, said, we want you to do a book on adoption. And it's like, well, do you want one for people who want to adopt or for people who've already adopted children? And they said, we don't know. I said, well, let me know, call us back when you figure that out. And they said, no, we want you to figure that out. And we said, well, how to adopt, that's already covered. What to do after you adopted, that book really needs to be done. It's in its 5th printing, and we have just had so many great responses to that. And then the unique angle of your book. I remember when we did the Mosaic Bible, again with Tyndale, it features 340 pages of artwork and writing from every branch of the church in every world for all 20 of the past centuries. And that was the unique angle of that particular Bible, which was a contemplative Bible that would give you 52 weeks of artwork and reading. And I remember my youngest daughter, who's 14 now, who's biracial, going through the book and did the same thing we all do with books that have photography or other kinds of artwork. And she was just looking at all the artwork, and then she looked up at me. And she said, and this is when she was still 10 years old, and she said, Dad, Jesus looks like me. And, sometimes it's just one person that makes all that work worthwhile. Well, we're going to go ahead and let you write to me as many times as you need to with questions. If you want a proposal, I can give that to you. On pages 10 and 11, you'll find 2 pages that have golden keys listed. And be sure to read the sentences at the very top of page 10, but the idea is that you already have some of these golden keys. You're already doing media interviews. You're already doing speaking engagement. You already know some key people who can endorse your book. There are a number of golden keys you already have, and the exciting thing for me is helping you to collect some more golden keys. And so if you've got an idea, and if I can open a door for you, great. If I can't, I'll check. One of the golden keys is the fact that as you travel, you may point to cities that have Christian publishers. Chicago, Colorado Springs, Grand Rapids, Nashville, New York, LA, places where if you come there in a month, who should meet with? I'll be glad to connect you. Or there's a lot that I'd like to hear about doing targeted DVDs on page 11. That's a lot of fun. Just not spending money doing a 2-minute pitch for your book, but you're pitching it to Thomas Nelson, or you're pitching it to London, or you're pitching it to Baker House, or Tyndale, or Eat Harvest House, or any of the publishers. Now, I remember one NJ evangelist who works with Cambridge Crusade now, of course, called Crew, and he did 6 different videos addressed to 6 different publishers. We only used for the DVDs, and he had a book deal. Well, did we wait those 4 other DVDs? That's not how Paul and I saw it. So, but again, the great thing is we didn't spend money to do it. 12, boy, there's a whole conversation. You got 4 blue arrows there. But you need to think about the fact that the book is not the goal. It's how to integrate that into your speaking engagements and interviews, to your online content that will bless hundreds of thousands of people. Dwayne Moore on Scott Dawson's team is a great example of this. On the bottom of page 12, nextlevelworship.com is a great website to see how he's integrated his media, his speaking engagements, his online content to promote a number of great books that he has had published over the last few years. Again, be sure to see this handout. Believe me, I still even go back and reread it myself. We'll catch our questions here in just a minute. Reminder again, please download the handbook. Please do not say, David says don't do traditional publishing. It's still a viable option 10% of the time. And sometimes it's not because of your platform as much as it's meeting a particular need. And that's certainly true for me because you all speak to more people than I do in a year. And yet sometimes we'll have a request to do like the adoption handbook. And what we did is had 20 experts contribute to that. Just before this webinar started, a major publisher contacted me. I read it on my smartphone right before this webinar started, and they said, do you know a number of leaders who could contribute to this book that we want to publish in 18 months? And I just smiled. I haven't replied yet because I was getting ready for this webinar. I would love to have each of you contribute a chapter, because guess what? If you contribute a chapter to that book and it sells well, then when you want to sell your book to that publisher, they already know you. And they, oh, we loved your chapter in that book. And so it's one golden key that's very easy for me to help you to secure. And I mentioned Bob Mortimer's book and Alan Green's books. There is a stack of great reasons and no negative reasons for you to consider publishing your book, at least the first edition of it, yourself through Amazon. This really works. As Dave mentioned and as it's listed in the beginning of the handout, I have had the joy. I didn't do the work. I don't get any of the credit, but I've had the joy of seeing other leaders publish more than 460 books. And, you know, and people go, well, but people aren't paying you because they're just taking your advice and using the handbook, or this handout. Well, the only thing I'm asking is send me one copy of your book when it's published. Every 10 days on average, I get a brand new book in the mail. Half the time, I didn't even know that it was coming out because they never wrote to me. They didn't ask any questions, but then when it was published, they remembered, oh, I'm supposed to send Dave a copy. Well, I'll promote your book like crazy through all of my social media and other outlets. But I hope that you do have a few questions along the way. So any other questions, Dave?
Yeah, here's an interesting one, Dave. This person says, I'm a much better speaker than I am writer. So if I take your suggestion to have all of my messages and sermons transcribed, how do I go about an editor turn those transcripts into books, and what can I expect to pay that editor?
Wow, that is a question I hope somebody was going to ask, actually, as you'll see from the new slide I just put up. What I will do is introduce you or give you the contact information on 3 editors who have worked with me for years, who've edited stacks of books, who love evangelism, who love Next Generation Alliance, one who worked with me for the Palau Association, 2 that worked with the company that my wife and I had for 6 years, who charge too little. They don't charge what they should be charging. They're charging 20% of what they should, that can take the transcripts and turn it into a book manuscript. So part of it depends on the topic more than the fact that they're transcripts. example, when Luis Palau did his book, Say Yes, on spiritual renewal, he outlined the entire book. He spoke at 4 different week-long conferences over a couple of summers, had all those messages transcribed. The editing of that book was a piece of cake because this transcript and this transcript, these other 2 transcripts, all go to chapter 1. And so you take the best stories and the best way that Luis told, and it took 4 to 6 hours to do each chapter. So it was very inexpensive. Related to that, let's talk about the question at the bottom of the slide. Who pays for this project, the ministry or me? We're running out of time, so I'll quickly say the ministry pays for it. And you keep track of every dollar, and then you keep track of all the income. Within a very short period of time, you have reimbursed the ministry for a point through just a quick letter of agreement or minutes of a meeting. It's known that the ministry spent X number of dollars. It might be $1,000, it might be $5,000. If you really want a great-looking cover for your book and you decide to pay somebody instead of letting a award-winning designer do it for free, but you make a note that the ministry spent this number of dollars and has been reimbursed more than that number of dollars, and all come from then on goes to you as the author. You keep the copyright book because from day one it's copyrighted in your name, but that way there's no question you have not crossed the line or gone into some gray zone on the IRS calls their inurement rules. So you're not taking money from the ministry. The ministry is more than fully, and the fact is it blesses them with generating new donors at every event.
David, just on behalf of the entire NGA family, just a big, huge thank you. You've met a felt need today. There's a few other questions, and if you have questions for David, please email them to the NGA staff, and we'll be sure to forward that email and your contact information on to David. He's a great of NGA. We do have probably 3 or 4, maybe even half a dozen questions. We'll be sure to get those to David, but yes, please send your questions to Amy here at the NGA staff, and she'll make sure David gets them. Again, David, thank you. And just a reminder to those